we may not see the world we really truly want, within our lifetimes. That makes it all the more imperative for us to work towards that world. So we make it slightly easier for the next generation, who then makes it slightly easier for the following generation, which makes it slightly easier for that next generation. Even as bad as things are right now, we have been beneficiaries of folks who continued to fight. Well, welcome back, faithful listeners and fresh recruits, to the In the Meanwhile podcast. I am Marcus Harrison Green.
And I'm Nora Kenworthy.
Nora, now I know you don't watch The Boys,
I
the show
don't,
about,
yeah.
yeah, you have a IQ over 52, I understand. But the show it's the show about superheroes who are actually corrupt, sadistic sociopaths operating with zero accountability. But this week felt like a mid-season episode of that show. It was vulgar, irrationally violent, and somehow both deeply upsetting and profoundly cosmically stupid.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I'm really sad that you didn't say that it was a finale episode because that would be nice about this point, Marcus.
If only, Nora, if only.
Um, and, like, that description could, describe actually just the first 4 minutes of Kash Patel at the Senate budget hearing this week. A budget hearing, Marcus. Like, they were supposed to be talking through line items.
I gotta ask you, Nora, like, what in the world did somebody do in a past lifetime to be reincarnated as Cash Patel? Because
I
they
mean,
just they had to live a horrible life. But anyway, folks, yes, our good FBI director appeared before Congress this week and responded to allegations of excessive drinking and erratic behavior by, wait for it, behaving like a man who had just discovered Fireball and Reddit simultaneously.
note to self and maybe to all of humanity, acting profoundly unhinged is not the most effective rebuttal to reports that you are profoundly unhinged. I mean,
Well,
the defensiveness is a tell at this point.
yes, slightly,
It's
slightly.
sort of like saying, I'm not defensive while flipping a table. And I don't know. I also wonder with about 60% sincerity whether this is, like, genuinely a cry for help. Like, does he
It
just
it
want out? I don't
I I mean, it could that's probably 50-50 at this point. I mean, one of the parts that got me, though, was, when Senator Chris Van Hollen, pressed him on his drinking allegations. Patel decided the best countermove was to accuse Van Hollen of, and I am quoting directly here, being the only person that was slinging margaritas into El Salvador on the taxpayer dollar with a convicted gang banging rapist, end quote.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And for those who need about 10 pounds of context here, um,
Yes, please.
what he seems to be referring to is Senator Van Hollen's trip to El Salvador because the Trump administration had allegedly mistakenly, um, uh, deported a Maryland resident, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, to a notoriously brutal high security prison. You may remember this from our not so distant past. And so Van Hollen had to travel there to check on a man that our government had tried to disappear into a foreign prison. And then during that meeting, which took him several days to get, if I remember correctly, the
Mhm.
Salvadoran government apparently placed what looked like cocktails on the table in front of them. Van Hollen called these props, seemingly to create the impression that Garcia was not being held in horrific conditions, but it was instead sort of enjoying a carnival cruise with like light appetizers and happy hour specials. Did I
Yeah,
get
and
that right, Mark?
I you hit it on the head, Nora. You hit it on the
Okay.
head. And I was just also thinking, like, I was like, just the face I was making there was like, God, that happened over the last year while we've been, producing this podcast, and that
It
feels
has
like
been a
10
long
years ago.
year. I know. How many misdeeds?
Yeah, there's countless, obviously countless. But to get back to Patel's unhinged outbursts, A, Garcia has never been convicted of anything, not a sex crime, not a gang membership. He did have a restraining order, one restraining order, and that's it. And B, the way Patel described that trip sounded significantly more like someone who desperately wanted to be on that trip than someone lodging a formal complaint. So
Yeah, it is sort of like mad he didn't get invited along, and Kash Patel loves nothing more than to party on the taxpayer's dime.
Let
Um,
me tell you.
yeah, I mean, I will say, and I guess I mean this is genuine historical commentary. Kash Patel's particular brand of chaotic incompetence, I g it sometimes makes me nostalgic, like,
Uh-oh. Go
not
on,
no,
Nora.
no,
Go
no,
on.
not for the good times, but, like, there are times in our history where having this kind of incompetence in the FBI might have
Mm,
actually been very helpful to our movements. I mean,
yeah.
if we'd had an FBI director handing out bottles of bourbon with his name on them during COINTELPRO, Martin Luther King might have actually had an easier life or survived, and Malcolm X and Fred Hampton might still be with us, and J. Edgar Hoover's little surveillance empire might have collapsed under the weight of its own absurdity or drinking problems.
Yeah.
Um, it feels sort of unfairly ironic that we get this kind of an FBI director when all of our movement leaders are content creators and, dare I say, podcasters at the point.
That is, I'll try not to take that with any
Don't take that
irony.
personally.
Not at all. It is tragic. It is tragic, Nora. But speaking of ineptness, which has not so quietly become America's new national pastime, slightly edging out casual narcissism, have you noticed that the president has been, I don't know, less there, if you will, less present
I
lately?
mean, one didn't think that it could get worse, but here
Oh,
we
it's
are.
worse. It's worse.
I mean, it's hard to even calibrate normal right now. The baseline is so extraordinarily bad. Uh, but yeah, I mean, it's now like he sleeps more than he's awake at official events. There's the social media spiral where he posted over 50 times in an hour, including three
Yeah.
separate videos described as derogatory videos about Black people,
Yeah. So it was a
two
Tuesday.
calls.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. At 4 a.m., right? I think he called for the arrest of Barack Obama
He
multiple
did.
times, his
Yeah.
one of his favorite targets, even though Barack is off like living his best life and making films. Um, I think he was unable to identify the football coach who was standing directly next to him, and obviously an ongoing war that he not only can't end, but can't seem to really comprehend.
Right.
Um, all while dismissing the economic suffering of regular people is basically irrelevant and annoying to think about. I really hope this is the low point. I'm maybe the next 2.5 years will be a steady incline towards coherence, Marcus. I mean, that has been known to happen with people of his age so often.
I I mean, one can hope, right, that the ineptness just starts to become to a point where there's just no action that is taken. But say la vie. That said, like what did stick out to me was it was a reporter who brought up the fact that there is inflation and gas prices that are
Mhm.
rising because of this war that yes is still going on, folks. And to your point, like Trump just openly saying that he is not thinking about Americans' financial struggles at all, like whatsoever. And it's like, isn't that the thing that you supposedly got elected on? And I just, and it's just sort of casually dismissed with, apathy. I don't,
I mean,
I,
not only that, like, not thinking about our national security, not thinking about
exactly.
anything except the reflecting pool in a ballroom. I mean, if we
Yeah.
needed a national, decorator in chief, maybe he would be very underqualified for the job, but it's terrifying. I mean, I was listening to Marketplace just the other day,
Mm,
and they were saying that the real impact of the Iran war and the kind of diesel crisis has not even hit our sort of pocketbooks yet, but that by
right.
June we're going to see this enormous increase in like food prices and the prices of basic goods because of this gas shortage. And I was just thinking about like how much more can people take at this point? Um
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Few people have the economic wherewithal. I will say, like, for all those who laughed at us here in Seattle with our electric scooters, who's
Uh-huh.
uh, who's laughing now, huh? Who's
Exactly.
laughing now? Okay. So anyway, Ah,
Oh, man, I pine for the days when politicians at least pretended to care about you before ruining your
that
life.
that is, it's the golden age of America,
Yeah, yeah,
Nora. We have long since passed.
yeah,
That said, there are still somehow millions of Americans who shrug at the chaos because Trump has spent a decade lowering the national standards for public behavior, like a man who is speed running institutional collapse.
yeah.
And yeah,
No, it really feels like we're living through, like, the acute phase of Trump desensitization syndrome. I mean, 10 years ago, if a president had posted 50 conspiracy theories and a bunch of, like, AI slop, overnight, people would have demanded a wellness check and possibly, like a 25th Amendment situation,
yeah,
and now half the country is not paying attention, and the other half is like,
no.
"Well, at least he didn't challenge a zoo animal to, like, Mortal Kombat this week," right?
Just wait, right? I wouldn't put it past him. I mean, the bar is no longer in hell, nor it is like the bar is being waterboarded underneath hell at this very moment.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and credit to the New York Times for still being like, "Can both sides learn from this? Should we have another focus group in the
oh
Midwest
boy,
of Republican voters?"
we are so not equipped in this country for this. But well, I do want to move on quickly, Nora, because you are the academic researcher amongst us. So, can you walk me through this? Like, I know correlation does not equal causation, but our national reading scores have cratered. There's a recent report about it, and somehow we've just, as we mentioned, we're watching an FBI director accuse a senator of margarita crimes. A president posts AI images of Iranian ships exploding, and a Trump branded smartphone that never shipped, but also quietly revised its terms to clarify that your $100 deposit was never actually a deposit. It was a quote unquote, a conditional opportunity if Trump Mobile later elects in its sole discretion to offer the device for sale. So, I mean, at what point do we acknowledge that these things are connected? The lower sort of ability to engage in critical thinking and reading comprehension and the state of our society at this
I
moment.
mean, I don't know at this point. I can't tell how much of it is, like, being willingly diluted for some greater sense of identity or, I don't know, hate of the other guy. And how much of it is like a lapse in critical thinking so wide that you could run a monster truck through it. No, but like the Trump phone thing to me is so funny because there's all these like angry people who are like, I can't believe I haven't gotten my phone yet. And it's like, this is the guy who never paid contractors. Like, of course you weren't gonna get your gold Trump phone.
Right. He was gonna screw
And
nobody's quote unquote
yeah,
out of their money, right? I mean, it was just yeah.
I know, cry me a river. This is also the phone that was like, quote first quote, "Proudly made in America," and then quietly changed to "Designed with American values in mind,"
Hmm.
uh, which, to be clear, I guess means that it was not made in America, and it was not actually designed by the Trumps, and, uh, is actually a perfect metaphor for this aggressive branding, non-existent product sort of reality that we
Yes.
live in right now. Um,
Yeah. I mean that phone is like, I don't know, it's a quote unquote luxury product that I think it was like $400 or something. Or supposedly it was going to be $400. It's just this thing wrapped in patriotism, manufactured somewhere else, and then doesn't, and then somehow it's still sort of functioning primarily as a grift that nobody could tell was a grift. Like I don't know the state of this, the state of some people, not all, as you said, not all, but some people. It's just kind of like how you would ever fall for this, but then again, we're in the situation we're in this society at the highest levels of society. So okay, I
I mean,
doesn't mean I have to be happy about it. Damn it, Nora.
no, and, like, you can still call for people to wake up, please God, at some
Yes.
point. But the
Ah,
phone
yes.
is, like, this perfect metaphor for the entire 2nd term, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
gold plated and imaginary. That's the whole pitch there, Nora.
oh, man, it's like I don't know, if we designate a new national bird, it's probably just gonna be like a pyramid scheme in a chicken outfit or
Uh,
something.
I could very much see that happening sooner than later. But anyway, despite all the absurdity, all this corruption, all the deeply cursed energy of the current political moments, we are still here, my friend. We are
We
still here.
are. We are, miraculously, which I think brings us to the purpose of today's episode.
Absolutely, because while this podcast spends a lot of time dissecting power, propaganda, inequality, fascism, late stage capitalism, and whatever cursed protein shake fuels RFK Jr., at its core, this show has always been about people.
People, us, right? Everyday people trying to navigate grief, exhaustion, uncertainty, joy, resistance, community, while living through a period of history that often feels emotionally sponsored by anxiety and maybe an acid trip. Um,
You're not wrong. But somehow, you all, against all odds, we have now done 51 full episodes. We also have a few mini ones in there, but 51 full banger episodes, Nora.
I mean, I don't know how. It feels impossible and also reflective of this 700 years long year that we've been living
Yes.
in.
Yeah. So, folks, we thought instead of doing some overly sentimental anniversary episode full of fake nostalgia and soft piano music, we do something a little bit more honest here,
Are
even
you
though,
telling me there's not gonna be any elevator music on this
yeah, there
episode, maybe?
there will not be. We're too good for that. We have we have an award-winning jazz musician who does
Exactly.
all of our music. So no, none of that elevator stuff going on here, folks. Anyway.
We thought we would take a moment to kind of retrospectively savor what we have learned from all of you, from our guests, and from this wild experiment in trying to stay human in a country that increasingly feels like it was purchased by crypto bros and moderated by an MMA fight.
So today we are reflecting on what it means to survive the meanwhile without losing our sense of humor, our humanity, our ability to imagine something better. And if you've been with us for a year, we try to do that every single episode. But here we want to do it a little bit more acutely as we reflect back on the year that has been this podcast and making and producing, weekly episodes for you all. So we're gonna ask each other a few questions, Nora, here to get us going. Um, and you mind if I start by asking you a question?
No, go for it.
Okay,
I'll try
okay.
and pass this test.
And I just so Nora, as you look back on this year of weekly episodes that we have done, what is one thing that you feel this podcast has changed about how you approach this moment of living in the meanwhile?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, we started this podcast pretty soon after Trump 2.0 started.
Right,
And
but
I think that
we overcame our period of mourning to then yes.
yeah, we had some deep internal work to do and some grieving, and then we were ready to start.
Yes.
Um, but I think it was still very much in the sort of immediate, like, chaosy, what the hell is going on aftermath of the inauguration.
Mm,
Um, and I think at the time I was at least in sort of I'm just gonna call it out, some of the more privileged and white circles in which I spend parts of my time, uh, there was a real kind of, like, sentiment of, like, "We just gotta put our heads down and, like, wait this out,"
mm,
you know? Like, not attract a target and
right.
just kind of try and ride it out and, like, protect our own and just stay quiet. And,
Yeah.
like, that really pissed me off at the time, and it scared me. Um, but I think what I've learned in in the meanwhile, is that so many people around us have the capacity for doing something,
Mm,
and continuing to show up and do stuff and fight in whatever way that they can fight, even when they're exhausted and overwhelmed, and looking at the news alerts on their phone and just being like, "Are
Right.
you freaking kidding me?" And but, like, I think through this podcast, we just, like, it's been this, like, series of beautiful conversations with people who are continuing to show up and interrogate this stuff really deeply and think about, like, "What can I do?" Um, and I think it's changed the way that I think about the time frame of in the meanwhile. I think probably in our lifetimes, we're gonna continue feeling like we're in the meanwhile,
Yeah.
for a long time, whether we're in the meanwhile of Trump or a climate crisis or whatever, and I think that we can't just put our heads down and wait for it to get better. I think every day we gotta show up and just, like, figure out how to make it slightly better today, and
Right.
that's really changed how I approach the day to day, and I think a
Mm.
really positive, ironically way.
Yeah, yeah. I don't yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying. I mean, I think for me, this podcast has made me approach every day with more intention, I think, than I did before, in the
Mhm,
sense that, yeah, to your point, I mean, there's particularly being in journalism, it seems like every hour on the hour, there's some fresh absurdity that's popping on my phone. And yet, I think this has made me sort of take a step back in the sense of, being able to be attuned to the everyday a little bit more in the sense of
mhm,
not just these, fresh absurdities that keep popping up, but the fact is like what I used to take for granted every day, right? Is every day there are people within my own communities and communities everywhere who, fall in love and uplift each other and, support each other through tough times or provide mutual aid for one another,
mhm,
right? And being able to bear witness to those things, being able to, help instigate some of those things, being able to just take part in those things as a community member, and not take those things for granted, particularly now when, there is so much ugliness and messiness in our world, but to be able to sort of hold on to the beauty of the everyday, not
mhm.
in the sense that you're burying your head in the sand, but that you're saying, okay, yeah, and this too, right? And this too,
Yes.
like, and this too
Yeah,
is going on, right? And this
yeah.
too is happening. And this, and this too, where people are acting so magnificently, even as
Mm,
we see people who act with such great horror. Like it's made me be more discerning with my attention, right?
mhm,
And um I think that's you I've learned that that is like truly a practice because I think, and I know I probably come across as very cynical at times on our show, probably because I am a lot, but in many ways, I'm also very hopeful in the sense of, that and hopeful, being hopeful in the sense that, things can potentially work out if we, not work out, but things can potentially be better if we ourselves try to enact change versus, being optimistic where it's like, oh, I'll just sit on my hands and, um, things will move forward. And it's like, no, like um, I think being somebody who continues to see it every day that folks are, to your point, are showing up, are doing, are trying not to bury their head in the sand, are trying to actively, not just protest, but actively like be there for community
mhm.
members.
Yeah,
I think those are the things that this show has changed about my approach to life, and
yeah.
yeah, I just take it a lot less for granted. I'll say.
Hmm, yeah. It's interesting to hear you say the sort of, like, "yes, and" kind of phenomenon right now because I think for so long and I think we this was particularly true in, like, progressive circles, we had, like, really black and
Mm.
white thinking about a lot of things, and I see a lot of people holding contradiction more these days,
Yes, absolutely.
and, like, being able to hear, a little bit of nuance, to sit with 2 things being true at once, to recognize that different people have different realities right now. I don't I I feel like I can't point to like one specific example of this, but I feel like the sort of phrase like two things can be true at once is sort of like the phrase of our moment in a lot of ways. And I think has shifted the ground of the way that people are thinking about how we see each other and how we recognize what people are going through right now.
Absolutely, and I think, to your point, which this show, it's reminded me of this poem that was actually popular during COVID, but it reminds me so much of right now, quite frankly, just because
Yeah.
of the intensity and heaviness. But it's called "The Day After," and
Mhm.
just want to recite a couple lines from it. But
Yeah.
it says, the world stopped, held its breath, and in that silence saw itself. The frantic rush, the noise, the greed fell away like winter seed. When doors unlock and streets revive, we take the first breath truly alive. We emerge not as we were before, but wiser, kinder to the core. With shadows of the days of fear, we hold our loved ones truly near. The earth has sighed, the skies have cleared. We are the ones the quiet cheered. For the lesson taught the hardest way is to cherish the light of every day. We walk with gratitude, strong and slow, having learned to let the trivial go. Emerging from the quiet, we find a world built on tender human kindness. And I well, I mean, you're the public health professional, so you know that we unfortunately didn't quite get that world post the heights of COVID, but I will
Something
say,
happened there. I don't
so
know.
there's some interruption. There's some interruption. No, but I'll say, right, in a sense that this, to me, even though that was written, what, 5 years ago now, that is still very much sort of what we're waiting for and what we continue to build for in the meanwhile, right? I mean, that's sort of the vision, right? That we want to
Yeah.
emerge from this moment that we have been under, when we have seen so many of our neighbors and community members, be stripped away from our communities, when we've seen, some of them, their lives lost, right? When we've seen them impacted by so much of the economic fallout from what's going on right now. I'm hopeful that as we get, many of us, get closer and closer to precarity, particularly in
Yeah.
those circles you talked about before, where they kind of held it at the heights of privilege. I hope that also maybe flattens empathy a little bit more,
Yeah.
in the sense of like, I see you, I feel you, I hear you, right? And it isn't just because, some David French style thing of like, I can only empathize with somebody because it impacts me, but at the same time, you know, the impacts of what's been going on don't leave people on it. It can't help but change people, I hope, right? And
Yeah.
and can't help but get them to a point where they're like, yeah, we truly are all in this together. And when I say, and we truly are interdependent. And that, I think once that's there's a mass realization there, I think that's how we get to that other side of this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's not to put a gloss on what has been a really horrific,
Yeah.
year and a half
Yeah,
for
not at
a
all.
lot of people. I think I just saw a story this week that they estimate that there are 400,000 internally displaced people in the US right now due
Mm,
to anti-trans legislation and
right.
gender discrimination. And it's like, I mean, that's just one example, right?
Yeah.
But I think people are learning how to I mean, it's this terrible lesson, right, of, like, learning how to hold that to be true and reckon with it and learn what empathy for that kind of suffering on that scale looks like, and also be able to walk outside and say, "You know what? The sun is out and there's a clear day today, and tomorrow might be full of wildfire smoke in the air," right?
Right.
But, like, uh, I'm grateful for this clear, beautiful day as well, and that's
Absolutely.
it's just a weird time to be living.
Yeah, when isn't it? I do I do want to ask you, Nora, too, for, I mean, we've had, yeah, 50 some odd conversations now with people,
Yeah.
and a ton of tremendous guests. And I definitely don't want to trivialize or cheapen any of them yet, because I think we've, you know, I think I can speak for both of us when I say we've learned from all of our guests.
Yeah.
But I do want to ask you, in the conversations that we've had over this past year, what do you think have what conversations do you think have impacted you the most?
Yeah. I mean, it's so hard to pick a favorite. I was actually going through, like, our archives as that we were kind of preparing to do this episode, and I
Mm,
was just, like, relishing each one because there's, like, some great stuff. We've I mean, like, I keep telling people that, like, the best part of having a podcast is you get to call up these incredibly cool people and be
I
like, "Hey,
know.
you wanna have a conversation?" And then just, like, ask them the most wild, honest questions. I mean, how lucky are we?
Yeah,
And
seriously. I've fanboyed out like so often with so many of our guests, and it's just like, wow, I get to actually talk to this person.
to
It's
this person, yeah,
Yeah.
just and as normal human beings. So that's been amazing. And I guess, like, I as an academic, I feel like I can always have an opportunity to talk to some scholar about their book, and we have those I love those conversations. But I think the conversations that I really, really savor are some
Mm.
of the conversations that we've had with people who are just in it, like I've been thinking about our conversation, for example, with Gina Baskin, this,
Mm.
like, young Black queer veteran talking about what the kind of scale up of the Iran war is looking like to her. I mean, or um or the conversation that we had after you went to Minneapolis, right? And we're really trying to grapple with what people on the ground there were experiencing in terms of grief and solidarity. I I feel like these are these, like, little windows into how humans are coping in all of their messy and beautiful ways, and that sort of piece of it is probably the piece that I savor the most. But I don't know, what about you? Do you have a favorite?
Yeah. Well, kind of similarly to you, and I know we didn't plan this, but like, we've had, and we obviously have had, celebrity authors and podcasters and so forth on this show, and we've been grateful to have them. But I think what stuck out to me was kind of like you, was sort of the conversations that we've had with just regular, quote unquote, everyday people. And I think back to our third episode, called Civic Bravery, and
Yeah.
you had I reached out to Jamie Cook, and she was a small town principal, um, in a very very red town, who had helped to organize protests for two of her students who had been um, impacted by ICE, and the fact that she was able to help
Mm.
organize 1,000 people marching in her town. Um, after ICE had detained our local students, it was, to me, that was really, still is, quite frankly, the tenor and spirit of our show, where
Yeah.
where we want listeners to see themselves in everyday people, right? That, it's truly is up to us to be activated. And when it comes to these times when our civic bravery and our civic courage is questioned, right?
Mm.
And these days, there it seems like it's an opportunity weekly, if not daily, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I think, when she talked about her students wanting them to be known that they are like deeply known and deeply loved,
Yeah.
um, I think that was a phrase that really stuck with me too, just because of, at the time, all the demonization. I said at the time, the continued demonization of our our immigrant communities.
Yeah.
Um, it was just, I don't know, it was something very sort of life affirming, I guess, to see that this was happening in real time, just as these ice raids and so forth were ramping up during that period. And to see that there are still people who are willing to, who are, again, are at the heights of privilege, who have no reason, no quote unquote practical reason, right, to get involved other than that they view, folks as their fellow human beings, and that, these these folks who are within their community should not, you know, be under should not be targeted, should not be under attack, should not have their human rights violated.
Yeah.
Um, these are and I hesitate to use the word hero, right? Because I think, within all of us there contains heroic, heroes. There contains, the ability to do heroic actions, or also we contain the ability to do very terrible actions. But I will
Yeah.
say, like, I think, this is an instance where these heroic acts, continuously multiplied, one on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other, can really build and bring some level of change. And these are the stories, right, that we need to continuously tell so
Yeah.
that people can see themselves, like, in these stories, and as these actors.
Yeah. And I love that I love that you called out the, like, element of love in that story, because I think that's also been a running theme through some of our most powerful conversations, is how much this real ethic of love shows up in the hardest times for people. I think that was showing up in our conversation with, like, Nilo Jenks talking about
Mm,
her family and the impacts that they felt in Iran.
right.
Um, it also came up in our amazing conversation with Gabriel Teodros, who was talking about sort of this concept of sort of living with love and like acting with love. And I, if you had told me a year ago, like that's going to be a persistent theme of this, I would have been like, that's really cheesy and squishy, and like, but it's true. And like, I just love how people are mobilizing these deep sorts of feelings for people in their communities and tapping into
Yes.
that as a source of, like, power. That's really cool.
It's truly yeah, it's truly incredible. Like, I I will say this, like, because I think when we started this podcast, and talked to Jessica about it, um, I knew it sort of had the potential to be, it's to sound Pollyannish, if you will,
Totally.
for to
Yeah, and
people,
I remember
right?
early descriptions of this podcast, it was both, like, vague and, like, "Are you guys really trying to sell us on this idea right now?"
But right, but it also came at a very necessary time, and I will say, there are times, right, when, we first started out, and it's kinda like, are we just shouting into the void here? But I can tell you there, at least twice in over this past 2 weeks, I bumped into people at the grocery store,
Mhm.
and they were, they stopped me and they're like, "I'm literally listening to your podcast right now. I'm
Yeah,
listening to you guys talk about, talk with
that's so
Peter
cool.
Fine our thank you so much for, um, breaking down, the week that it was, and doing it in a way where I don't feel like I need to, need to, check myself into therapy or something, right? And um, this really is something that I've found where, yeah, I mean, I think both of us are into this is not for the money, obviously,
Yeah,
but for the fact that I think it's something that is necessary, right? And particularly at a time where so much is being destroyed, whether it's, certain institutions, whether it's certain social norms, to build something that is, foundationally can, help people metabolize all of their various and messy and conflicting feelings.
yeah,
Um, Yeah, I think this is, we talk about this as and I think we say life kit for the apocalypse, but it's certainly been a life preserver for
yeah,
a lot of people as they're,
yeah,
sort
yeah.
of rudderless at this moment.
Yeah, and I think in this time of, like, sound bites and clips and, like, mini videos and, like, everything is so short and intense, it's it's something different to sit and have a long conversation with a person and really get to a heart of a matter, and, that feels like a really a really special work to be able to do in this moment in time is to, like, sit and just, like, really be in conversation with someone. Um, but that said, Marcus, is there, like are there, like, sound bites from these conversations that live rent free in your head? Because I know for me, like, there are little nuggets of wisdom that I say to myself, like, multiple times a week that our guests have told us, and I wanna know some of yours.
Yeah, God, I mean, I think, Douglas Rush Coffee was a just a very,
I wasn't expecting
um,
you to lead with that one. Alright, okay.
interesting interview. I mean, in a
Was
good
it
way,
when he
but
called
yeah,
you cute, Marcus?
yes, I do recall. I do recall, but that was one where I was like, Jess, you're gonna have to do a lot with the censoring of this of certain things on this episode. But no, I'll say I think less of a soundbite, but more of sort of an overall theme from Ijoma Lua when we were talking to
Mm,
her was, I think there's so often that, and she actually brought this up recently, and I saw her talking at the South Seattle Emeralds Gala, but
mm,
she talked about how, so often, people look at our current times, and no, they aren't great, but they're sort of like, it's worse than it's ever been, and um, there's no sort of hope or whatever. And as she says, when we talk about that, it sort of trivializes all of the fights that people have had over the course of decades and years to just,
yeah,
even get us to this point of rights and so forth that we take for granted. And, I was thinking of as she was talking about, the women's suffrage movement. Um, that took, nearly 150 years, and there were certainly people, and and quite frankly, there was a lot of messiness within that. There was you had Susan B. Anthony who had said some things about
mhm,
Black folks that certainly
mhm,
Sojourner Truth did not appreciate, and all. I mean, that's another episode for another day. But I would just say, in terms of like, realizing how long these fights are, and um it actually struck me in thinking about the Voting Rights Act and how it's been, gutted, and the fact that that was, when it passed in, 1965, I want to say, you have had people trying to dismantle that for that long of time, whether it's
yeah,
been through organizing and financing, and then, putting certain people in positions of power, such as the Supreme Court, and for this quest, right, and crusade that certain folks wanted to make sure happened, even if it wasn't in their lifetime. And I think when I look at it now of the world that we're trying to build, I think a part of it is like us recognizing and realizing that we may not, and most likely won't, quite frankly, see the world we really truly want, within our lifetimes. That said, that makes it all the more imperative for us to work towards that world, right? So we make it slightly easier for the next generation, right? Who then makes it slightly easier for the following generation, which makes it slightly easier for that next generation, right? I mean, I think that's our ultimate charge, right? Because we've been, even as bad as things are right now, we have been beneficiaries of folks who continued to fight and claw and put their life's energy, however imperfect as they were, and they were, right? But to continue to overall leave a legacy that, has been beneficial to us.
yeah, yeah. I'm also so glad that you brought up our conversation with Ijoma because, I mean, there's so many pearls of wisdom from that conversation, but
Mm,
one of the other things that she said that I really loved, and I think about it a lot, was about she was talking about sort of how this is, like, my year of consent, right?
mm,
And
yes.
I realized that, like, I can only get people to go so far with me, right? Like, they have to consent to do with to be in this with me, and
Mm,
I can't do anything if someone doesn't wanna come along and, like, do this work with me, right? Um, and I think that has given me this space to, like, stop grieving so much the people who are not doing what they need to do in this time, or, like, kind of not fighting as much, or not willing to kind of dig deep on this work and really direct more of my attention to the people that are. And to just kind
Yeah.
of say, um, "It is what it is," right? Like, and, like, let's get everyone who does consent to this kind of work, like, together, and, like, let's just focus on what we can do. And yeah, I
Absolutely.
just yeah, that's been, like, definitely a tagline for me since we talked.
with with that, yeah, I want to ask you, with that, do you think that would be our, maybe, yeah, I know you said that'd be the tagline. With that, what do you think our thesis statement
Oh
after this
god.
year would be, Nora?
Oh, Marcus, that is, like, such an academic question. I don't know if
Only
this is
fitting that you
appropriate.
be
Well,
asked. Like,
okay, I don't know if this is appropriate, but it's the first thing that comes to mind, so, like, why don't I say it? So, there's this really great, abortion activist named Amelia Murray, who I think is here in Seattle,
hmm,
and she, has really specialized in figuring out how to get abortion access to people even in places where it is illegal, or being outlawed, and her org has this great shirt that says on it, like, "Fuck SCOTUS, we're doing it anyway." And I feel like I feel like sort of like, "Fuck this, we're doing it anyway," is, like, maybe the thesis statement of the year for me,
I,
at
I
least.
I can not at all like top that, so I think we have a winner, is what I would
Okay.
say.
Should we make t-shirts?
Yeah. We got that. We have the, what is it, from Professor Dadiave, indoctrinate these
Indoctrinate these
nuts.
nuts. Yeah,
Yes, so we're
yeah, we're
adding to
collecting
the
taglines. Yeah,
adding to the Shopify
yeah.
site there, folks. I a, a couple quick hitters, I guess, Nora, for you. What do you think you've learned most about yourself? From the conversations we've had this year, and I will, of course, also answer this question, I
I
should
know,
say.
when are you gonna answer these questions, Marcus?
I
Um, I think the thing that I've learned most is that I have a capacity for joy even in really awful time. I am not a person who is, like, naturally attuned to, like, optimism. I think
if
that's,
listeners
like
couldn't tell, but
yeah,
no,
I don't know.
yeah.
I mean, uh, but I think, as you were talking about earlier, there's a certain kind of practice of observing joy and observing gratitude even when things are terrible, that I I am surprised by my own capacity for it, and I don't know if that's just my brain just trying to, like, survive awfulness, but if you had told me, pre-2020, like, 2016, I don't know, when did the crazy start? I don't know, but that, like, for example, my daughter was literally the last thing she said before she went to bed last night was like, "Mom, did you know that the Antarctic ice shelf is gonna melt in 25 years?" The last thoughts before bed, right? That I would be able to, like, hold that and sit with her with that and, like,
Mm.
then kiss her goodnight and also savor that, like, she's a 9-year-old who still lets me, like, snuggle her before bed. I didn't think that I would be able to hold those 2 things together at the same time, but I am, and I'm really grateful for that, even as, like, really heartbreaking as it all is.
Yeah. God, yeah. Sorry, just trying to process and think
Would
about that.
you
I mean,
like
that
to help
is.
with the bedtime routines over here? Because it's getting kind of intense.
My God, yeah, what our last episode with Maggie Humphreys about all the weight that mothers have to carry. I get it. I get it. No. Yeah, I mean, in terms of answering that question for myself, I think in some ways being, truly believing, what Howard Zinn said is, there's that quote. He says, open quote, to be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many, where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act and at least the possibility of sending the spinning top of a world in a different direction. And if we do act in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presents. And to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory. Close
Oh,
quote. So,
yes.
yeah, the great Howard Zinn.
Oh
But
my god, and I feel like that just, like, perfectly captures the spirit of so many of the conversations that we've had this year with people who are just doing that exact thing. Thank you. It's great.
absolutely.
Should
Well,
we should we do some more
yeah,
joy, Marcus?
I
Should we do
think
our
we should.
official
This has been
joy?
a joyous
I
episode.
know.
I know not all have, so, but this one is overfloweth. So, but you want to go first, Nora? You want me to go first? What would you like?
You go first. You go first.
All right. Well, I mean, my joy obviously is, being able to do this podcast with you, having our excellent producer, Jessica. But I will say a close second, though, for this week. And speaking of imperfect messengers, was Chelsea Handler at the roast of Kevin Hart. And um, she definitely was lambasting some of the very MAGA friendly manosphere types, but particularly Tony Hinchcliffe, who is a MAGA comic, and he had famously or infamously, I suppose, talk shit about Puerto Rico during the
Mhm.
2024 election, basically saying that it was, a shithole and so
Cool.
on and so forth.
Great.
And to see his face as Chelsea Handler was giving it to him, and there are multiple jokes. The one that I think say without there being without Jessica having to do too much work was she was basically like, of course you'd be at a roast of a black man because you you typically burn crosses on
Oh, shit.
on the lawn of people. So it's, yeah, I mean, and he was
Wow.
like not taking the roast at all, like
Mm.
in any type of dignified way. You could tell that he was just like seething and inside, which was sort of like, it was just sort of good to see that you see these people all the time who continuously are punching down. They're punching
Yeah.
down at marginalized communities. They're punching down
Yep.
and folks of color and so forth, and to finally get some comeuppance in such a public facing way,
And they
it
take
was
it
just,
so
yeah,
badly. They cannot handle it.
at all, at all. And so I was just happy to see it in real time,
Yeah.
somebody getting flamed. And so there you go.
I fully support that kind of petty joy, as you well know.
We need more
Well,
of it, Nora. Need more of it. Anyway.
I think mine is a little more bittersweet and personal. I practice something that I sort of personally in my brain refer to as data edging, which means that I'm constantly at like 99% of my data capacity on my phone or my Google account or whatever, and I refuse to ever buy more data. And so, in an attempt to try and get my phone functioning again this week, I was trying to clean stuff off of it. And I found this audio recording from exactly 10 years ago. And it was Mother's Day of 2016. And uh, we had recently figured out that I was pregnant with my daughter. And we decided as a Mother's Day present to call my husband's grandmother and let her know that she was going to become a great grandmother. And I think she was like 99 at the time. She was not all there. She could barely hear
Yeah.
anything. But and she's this woman who's just like lived this incredibly like joyful but also challenging life. And for some reason I decided to like record the phone call when we called her
Mm.
and told her. And like
It turns out you're going to be a great grandma.
Oh, that's beautiful. God bless you all. I'm so happy to hear it.
Oh
Did
the
my
you
unfettered screaming joy that she had. Like, I totally had forgotten this.
And what I have to say is muscle
Oh, thank you, Grandma.
And all of a sudden, I mean, she has since passed, and all of a sudden it felt like she was just, like, in the room again, and her joy and she just had this, like, infectious celebratory joy about everything, whether it was, like, riding a roller coaster at 90 or, like, enjoying a really great dessert. Like, it was just, like, she was so joyful about all of her life, and to have this, like, window back into this, like, moment of, like, pure joy was so lovely. And then because I found it and I didn't expect to find it, I was able to send it to my mother-in-law, and so she was able to hear her mom's voice, like,
Oh
after
my
all this
God.
time had passed. And, yeah, it was really magical. And so, like, record random things on your phone and then lose them for 10 years? I don't know.
That is that is so extraordinary, Nora. I'm also, I gotta say that I've never been so grateful to go first in the history of the show because I that would now have wanted to
Every
follow
once
that
in a
with
while, I
Chelsea
have a
Handler.
gem, Marcus. It's rare.
More than once, my friend. That said, shall we go ahead and sign off for today?
On our 51st episode, yeah. Well, folks, we have officially survived nearly a year of this show together, which means you are either deeply committed to staying informed or you have a very specific kind of masochism, and honestly, we love you for it either way. We are genuinely, profoundly grateful that you exist because you are living proof that we have not just been two people screaming into the void for 12 months. And if you'd like to make sure that we can keep doing this, please head over to inthemeanwhilepodcast.com. Your contributions fund this, what we think of as important work. We hope you
Yes.
agree, which in this news cycle is basically trauma processing with friends and better audio quality than we normally have.
Oh, yeah. And immense, genuine from the bottom of our hearts, thanks to every single guest we've had over this past year. People who brought their wisdom, their grit, their lived experience, and their stubborn insistence on doing good work in a world that makes that harder than it needs to be.
Yes.
Every one of them reminded us, and hopefully you, that there are real people out there navigating the spinning marvel with intention and grace, and that is not nothing, that is, in fact, everything.
Huge thanks as well to our producer, Jessica Partnow, who has the particular superpower of listening to us process ambient dread in real time. And I'm telling you, it is messy most and then editing it into something that actually sounds like we had a plan the whole time. And trust us, we do not have a plan. Jessica just makes it sound like we did. That is a gift. And also a massive shout out to Ahama Oluo, who has made this show literally hum over the past fiscal year.
He has indeed. And you all can catch In the Meanwhile Wednesdays at 5 p.m. on KVRU or wherever you stream podcasts. You can also follow us on Blue Sky, Threads, and LinkedIn. New episodes drop every single Friday.
Until then, go find someone you take for granted, tell them what they mean to you, and hug them if they consent to it. That last part is sort of important.
Yes, take care of yourselves, everyone. Take care of each other. And until next time, we will see you in